I wouldn't say directly.
Okay.
Um, so no, I wouldn't say directly. Yeah. I would say that this has been really difficult, during this time, during the pandemic. There's a lot of people that are concerned about their health, a lot of people concerned about their future, a lot of people concerned about their finances. And add to that, the fact that a lot of us are socially distant from a lot of people that we love. We're not able to give hugs to our family members. We're not able to see and witness graduations and celebrations like we generally used to. And so, yeah, this has been really difficult mentally to go through. And like I mentioned, to go through COVID-19 personally with my family, it was a difficult time. But I think one of the things that really kept me centered is, my faith. And so that's one of the things that, I hold strong on. And, God brought us to this pandemic, and He's going to bring us through this pandemic. And I really like what one of my mentors has said, that even though this is a pandemic, we can also make this a plandemic, PLA-demic, PLAN-demic, and use this time to really plan and and see what we want for our futures. We have one of the times where it's the most quiet, the most one of the times where it's been, things have kind of slowed down, where it's given us the time to really think and reposition ourselves and get focused onto what we have going on in our future. And so, I've been using this time to really plan out what I want for my future, and that's what I've been really encouraging a lot of my mentees as well, just to really use your time wisely. Pick up a hobby. One of the things that I've been doing more often is being more physically active. I've been on the tennis court. I've been running and just focusing more on, my health. I feel like during this time, we're in this pandemic. So. Yeah, I mean, the fact that I'm in medical school is stressful enough. And you add to that component, like we talked about, having to work 2 times harder because you are black. You feel like there's so much pressure on you. You feel like, there's so many people depending on you. With me being the first doctor in my family, I don't feel the pressure, but I just feel that responsibility that I have to do what I can to make my parents proud, make my community proud. The fact of the matter is that we have a lot of healthcare disparities, and one of the things that we believe can help address these healthcare disparities is increasing the minorities in the workforce, having more black physicians in the workforce. So, yeah, when you think about how it's a life or death moment for a black person, if I fail, if I don't succeed, it really makes me work harder. It makes me want to really motivate those people, that those students that are coming up behind me, and really um, get them on board and make sure they're on the right track, and reduce as amount of stress as possible. Because yes, it is stressful enough to go down this path, but you add on to the fact that there's not that many people that look like us on this path. That does make it stressful, but I wouldn't let that discourage anyone. I just really want to motivate them to keep pushing. I don't have any personally, no. Everybody has been thankfully fine, but I do know that, this pandemic has really affected a lot of people's finances. And financially, people are losing their jobs. I do know that a lot of people have been laid off. Unemployment numbers skyrocketed during this pandemic. But, thankfully, we're, starting to see, I think, better numbers when it comes to people actually going back and getting jobs. It's been really difficult. From what I've seen on the news is, the employment numbers were at an all-time low in the middle of the pandemic. But from what I recall from the job numbers, they're slowly getting up, but they're not back where we were when we started the pandemic. Yeah, I don't know if it would be just a true divide, but there are some differences. The fact of the matter is that, you know, Black Americans, we struggled in this country. Over 400 years ago, we were brought to the shores of this country, and we were enslaved for an extended period of time. And it wasn't until, in the late 1800s where we were freed. And even after that, we weren't truly free as true Americans. We had to fight for our right to vote. We had to fight for our rights to, just be recognized as true American citizens. And so that struggle has been going on since we stepped foot on this country. And that struggle, unfortunately, is somewhat still continuing in 2021. And so my hope is that we continue to move forward and recognize that Black lives do matter, that recognize that Black voices do matter, that recognize that we are a people and we are strong and we have a significant role in this country. We help build this country just like a lot of the other Americans. We help establish this country, and I'm really hopeful that those experiences that we had in the past will look much different than my children will have to grow up in. I haven't had that personal example during school, but I think that story just underscores the need for diversity and inclusion in our institutions. Everybody doesn't grow up in the same environment, and everybody doesn't come up in the same background. So, that's why it's so important to have people, organizations that are diverse, so that you can be aware of those different backgrounds, those different upbringings, and not think that, that's an attitude, but that's just how they grew up. That's not a representation of being rude or disrespectful. And that's why it's just so important that we have, more Black faculty, so that people that do understand that can speak up and say, hey, we hear you, we listen, we hear exactly what you're saying. And to flip that back to the medical field, that's why it's really important that we have Black physicians as well, because you have Black patients come in and they talk about their experiences. They talk about how they may not have the money to pay for their medication. And, a lot of times it takes somebody that comes from that culture, that understands them, to be able to listen to them and say, hey, I understand exactly where you're coming from. This is what I'm going to do to help you out. Instead of somebody that may not understand, may, dismiss them and think that they're lazy, think that they're not responsible, think that they're not compliant or listening to them. But that's why it's really important that we understand that everybody, comes up in different cultures, and we have to be accepting of those different cultures. Unfortunately, we've seen what's going on here at South Alabama in terms of the faculty members in the College of Business, and the pictures that were posted that had some derogatory images, and that offended a lot of black students like myself, and so my hope is that the university does what it can to fully investigate as to what happened in this and make the appropriate changes that it needs to have in order to make sure that this does not happen again. We as black students really have a large percentage there at the general undergrad university, and so black students contribute a lot to the University of South Alabama, and I just hope that they continue to be in an environment where they feel welcome, where they feel comfortable, and they don't feel like there's just this discriminatory environment that they have to learn in. It's unfortunately it's somewhat unsurprising, because we see a lot of these things happen nowadays at several different institutions, where it sometimes gets swept under the rug. But like I said, my hope is that after what we've seen in the year of 2020, this should be a wake-up call for America, that black lives do matter. Our voices and our money matters. We contribute a lot to these institutions. We contribute a lot to society. And it's time for black Americans to be recognized. It's time for them to be heard and seen. And, my hope is that these institutions moving forward will now realize that, this needs to be a central principle in their philosophy, that there is a focus on diversity. There's a focus in inclusion. It's a focus in representation, because representation matters. And I think that is just something that I think a lot of universities are hoping to move toward in the near future. It actually doesn't come as a surprise, because sometimes, unfortunately, black students are perceived as, not good. We don't sometimes fit into that mold of being that good student that, unfortunately, a lot of people try to put us in. We even see that in residency, in medical residency. Studies have shown that black residents are dismissed at a higher rate than their white counterparts from residency programs. When you look at the dismissal rates, blacks have a large proportion as compared to whites. And, the question is why? Why are, these future doctors that our country so desperately needs dismissed from their residency programs? Is it because they're bad, like some of these people are saying? No, I don't think that they're because they're bad. I think there's because of some discrimination that's going on, and we really need to be more aware as to the punishments, the harsher punishments that we place on our black students compared to our white students. That's really key too, because say for instance, a child, they may do something that's, as a child, children mess up sometimes. And so when you do suspend a black child like that, like you mentioned, they may have that perception of, no, I can never become a doctor one day. No, I'll never become a lawyer one day. No, I'll never be able to do anything successful because I've been to the principal office so many times. I've been disciplined so many times. My path is only to go to jail or something like that. And that's not the perception that we want to place in our young um, young black children's minds. No, you can be something, regardless of what, the what you've done early on. There are plenty of people, I know physicians that may have found themselves in detention sometimes. I, personally, as I think back, I was in detention once. I had a bad apple once in elementary school, and so that didn't. I won't let that kind of stuff stop me. But yeah, that's something that we really have to address and put a spotlight on when we do see harsher punishments for our black children in our education system. Yeah, I would definitely tell them to never give up. We see so many examples throughout African American history. We just left Black History Month in the month of February, and we see the examples of what our black ancestors have done since they stepped foot on this country. And that could be any one of us in the future, making a difference for the future generations, making a difference for the people that we, surround ourselves with. We have the opportunity to continue to make that difference that our ancestors have done over these past few years, several years, being in America. We can be the next president. We can be that next producer. We can be that next doctor, that next lawyer, that next engineer, that next plumber. All these other things that if you set your mind to, you can believe. If you believe it, you can achieve it. You can't. If you believe it, you can achieve it. And so, one of the things that I definitely want to instill to the listeners is that, you may have that that stress associated with just being black in whatever your field is, but don't let that stop you. Let that motivate you, because your community is dependent on you. We're all supporting you. We all are, it takes a village, and it takes, having those family members that are around you to support you, having those people that you may not even know to support you. It's just really important that you keep pushing towards your goal. And I promise that if you keep pushing, you will succeed at what you put your mind to.
That was a good answer.
Thanks. Thank you, thank you, thank you.